Red Bull's domination this season has led to calls from some for rule changes to help the rest of the field catch up. Red Bull have got where they are on merit though. They've achieved their level of performance by simply understanding the rules better than anyone else. Not that that will make those chasing them feel any better. With the 2026 changes still 2.5 seasons away, the FIA have decided to make changes for 2025, but probably not the ones you were expecting. They have also given an update on what is happening with the 2026 rules as well. Want to know more? Then stick around for the rest of the video. Let's start off by talking about 2026, which is when the next big set of rule changes comes in. You all know about the engine changes and the big gains to electrical output of the engines, but the FIA has given us the first hints as to what the cars might look like. There are a couple of problems that need addressing with the new cars. The first is the size and weight of the current Formula 1 cars. They're bigger than they've ever been and are starting to weigh as much as traditional race cars, not single-seaters. They've lost their nimbleness, they don't properly fit on some tracks, and honestly, the racing is worse for it. Monaco didn't always have single-digit overtakes every year. You just can't get two F1 cars side by side around most of the track anymore. The second issue that needs addressing is one that was raised by the Red Bull team earlier this season. They were worried that plans for increased reliance on batteries, with a 50-50 split between combustion engine and electric power production, could backfire and leave cars unable to run flat out around a lap because they cannot produce enough energy. I think that perhaps where we need to pay urgent attention before it's too late is to look at the ratio between combustion power and electrical power, Horner said at the Austrian Grand Prix. He went on to say that currently, in their simulations, the drivers were having to shift down on long straights at a handful of tracks to help charge the battery, and no one wants to see F1 cars going slower for any reason. Fortunately, the answer to both of these issues is the same. Making the cars lighter and smaller will mean the battery power of the engine will go further. Having less mass to move requires less energy, simple enough. Part of that will be the amount of fuel the cars need. F1 is aiming for 70 kilograms of fuel on average for a full race length, which is 30 kilograms less than the 100 kilograms needed in 2020. But more can and is being done. The FIA's head of single-seaters, Nicholas Tombazis, said that the main shift will be in the size of the car, with the dimensions of the wheels, which will be narrower, plus the rear wing and the car in general. We aim to reduce the weight of the cars by around 50 kilograms, he said. So it will be possible to see smaller single-seater cars, shorter and narrower. The changes to the engines is going to make them smaller, which will reduce the size of the car, specifically the length. Nicholas continued, but we are talking about solutions that still need to be discussed. With a car on a diet, we will be able to reduce the cornering speeds a bit. Being lighter, they will go faster in a straight line, but will generate less aerodynamic load. So we will need to increase the hybrid's energy recovery to ensure adequate lap performance. Tombazis went on to directly address Red Bull's concerns. He said that the FIA has put a lot of effort into ensuring that what is coming for 2026 works from the racing perspective. A lot of work has been done to understand how energy recovery and management will have to be done, and how overtaking can be done based on the aerodynamic configuration, he said. We've carried out many simulations by changing these parameters, and we have found solutions that seem to work adequately. Tombazis suggested that some of the original concerns voiced about the performance of the 2026 cars were not based on up-to-date simulation models. Instead, he said that Red Bull, though he refrained from actively singling them out, was simulating with the new engine dropped into a current car, which will not be the case. If one took the 2026 power unit and mounted them on the current cars, probably the result would be the scenario put forward by those who were worried, he said. But in recent months, we have collected a series of very positive developments, so the comments express old positions. We also need to take into account that the engine and chassis will have to evolve together, and it will not be possible to think of one without the other. As these rules change, we will get a better idea of what the new Formula 1 cars will look like. For now though, just knowing they're going to be shorter and lighter should bring you a lot of joy. A lighter and shorter car will improve racing as the cars become more nimble, able to turn quicker, drive side by side in more places, and generally look more like classic Formula 1 on track. 2026 is still a long way away though, and the FIA wants to make changes sooner than that. In response to complaints from a number of drivers that the current generation of cars are getting as difficult to race as they were before the 2022 rule changes, the FIA are planning change soon. Its analysis of the performance of the current ground effect machinery is that the 2023 cars have given away 50% of the gains that were achieved for 2022, in terms of the downforce loss the cars experience when running close behind each other. This backs up comments from Carlos Sainz after last weekend's Italian Grand Prix, where he suggested that the cars were getting harder to race again. It's starting to become a bit like 2021 or 2020, where it was difficult to follow, said the Ferrari driver. The entire aim of the aero rule changes of 2022 was to allow the cars to follow closer to each other by reducing the amount of dirty air they left in their wake. Last season, we saw some incredible close racing. The Silverstone Grand Prix, after the late safety car, comes to mind, when we had roughly 10 laps of nose-to-tail racing with battles throughout the field. This season, though, that close racing has been less evident. With a lot of design work for the 2024 season already well underway, the FIA would really struggle to get any rule changes through with the agreement of the teams. And with it not being a safety concern, they do need the team's approval. Instead, they're looking ahead at 2025. Tom Bazis says that a proper solution is being worked on for 2025 to help address matters and improve the aero characteristics. We are studying solutions for 2025, he explained. We have identified some parts of the car to act on, such as the end plate at the front wing, the side of the floor, and the fins inside the wheels. We could lay down somewhat more restrictive rules in these areas. It is clear we no longer have the advantage of 2022, and therefore, we know that there is work to be done. While this may help in 2025, it does mean that next season, the loss of downforce when following another car could be even greater than it is now, as teams develop over the winter break. With the rules only being in place for one season as well, the changes the FIA makes aren't likely to be huge. It seems more likely that we'll see something similar to the tweaks made in 2019. The most obvious changes there were to the front wings, which were simplified to chip away at the outwash. This was based on research done for the ground effect rules that were then scheduled for introduction in 2021. The 2019 change was criticised for not making much difference, but the consensus was that it at least contained the problem and prevented it getting significantly worse in the final years of those regulations. The hope is the 2025 tweaks can be more effective than this, but the modifications Tom Bazis has alluded to won't reinvent the wheel. Could these rule changes affect Red Bull though? There have been plenty of fans calling for rule changes to try and hold them back, and while the teams inside the grid haven't said it to the press, you know they're wishing for rule changes to help them close the gap. Unfortunately though, that isn't going to happen, not with these changes anyway. The 2025 changes will focus on the over-body aero features, which create far more outwash and therefore dirty air in their wake than the underfloor aero features. Red Bull's car has the most effective underfloor of any of the cars on the grid. It is where a lot of their performance comes from. Others rely more on the overbody aero for their downforce. The 2025 changes, as we understand them at the moment, are far more likely to affect the rest of the grid more than Red Bull. Specifically, expect the teams who seem to have the worst understanding of the underfloor, like Mercedes or Ferrari since the plank changes last year, to suffer the most, while the likes of Red Bull, McLaren and Alpine will probably come off relatively lightly. Are you excited to see Formula 1 cars getting smaller? And are you happy the FIA are making changes to improve the racing in 2025 instead of just waiting for 26? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and until next time, drive safe and bye for now.